Welcome back to Strictly Money. If you've wanted a financial plan done, but the cost of getting one has put you off, you might be in for some relief. FP Canada is lobbying the federal government to introduce a tax credit to encourage low and middle income Canadians to get financial planning advice. To talk about the proposal and the role financial plans play to improve the financial resilience of Canadians is Sebastien Labrecque. He is Chief Economist with StrategyCorp Institute of Public Policy and Economy. Thanks for coming on, Sebastien.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this is FP Canada that wants the federal government to introduce this tax credit to support lower income Canadians to get financial planning advice. And I know you were involved. You've created this white paper. Why are they doing this? What's instigated it?
So I think really when you think about what happened during COVID, it really is the genesis of all of this, right? Financial resilience. Canadians have struggled with financial resilience well before the pandemic, but it's really the pandemic that shed light into the situation. And coming out of COVID, now we have inflation and economic uncertainty. So the financial resilience of Canadians continues to be challenged. So that's kind of what we look at in the report in terms of what is the state of financial resilience. And we'll get into that a bit later. And also, how can we help Canadians, especially as you mentioned, low and middle income Canadians, improve it? And we find that there's evidence that financial planning would be one of the solutions.
Yeah, let's talk about financial resilience because I'm sure a lot of our viewers have not heard of that term. What is financial resilience and what is the state of it? How has it changed?
So I like to answer that question by saying what it is not.
Okay.
I think a lot of people think, financial resilience is about having a big job with a big salary, or, it's about having a lot of money in your bank account. And, that's not true at all. When you look at the definition of financial resilience, if I tell you that it actually varies. There are a lot of definitions out there in the scientific and government literature, but they really have two things in common. It's multidimensional, and those dimensions are actually interrelated. So for the context of the paper, we actually use the definition of the Financial Resilience Institute. And I will just read it to make sure that I get it right. It's
Yeah.
a household's ability to get through financial hardship, stressor, and shocks as a result of unplanned life events. Now, one thing that I want to stress here, we often think of unplanned life events as, losing your job or something negative. But when you look at the literature more broadly, life events can also be positive and have an impact on financial resilience. Think about, you're having twins instead
Hmm.
of just a child, right? All of a sudden, you're paying more money for a variety of baby products. So that can also stress your finances. So that's really the definition we're working with. And from this definition, there's an index that was created by the Financial Resilience Institute. And to answer your question specifically about the state of play, the number of Canadians that are financially resilient is actually decreasing. It's now at 22% as of June of 2022. It used to be 31% just a year ago. If you look at the other end of the spectrum, and you have it on the screen here, so this is
Hmm.
great.
Yeah.
So if you look at the other end of the spectrum, 21% of the population is extremely vulnerable. And if you throw in there people that are financially vulnerable, which is just the category above, you're actually looking at half the population. And on average, women are more likely to be less financially resilient than men. So it's a significant issue across the population.
Yeah, and I gather it's gotten worse with COVID and the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. As the numbers you had on your on the screen, the number of people at the one end, that were financially resilient down, 9%, and then at the other end of the spectrum, the number of people that are extremely, you know, vulnerable also grew.
Hmm. Especially, we only have 30 seconds to the commercial break. Where are people most vulnerable?
I think we're going to need more than 30 seconds to cover this question, but perhaps I can give a teaser. Household debt, savings, and retirement savings, but we can talk about this more.
Okay, household debt is a big one. Well, that probably leads to because of inflation.
Yeah, definitely one of the factors.
And what was the other one? Debt.
Savings, lack of savings.
Okay. And then the last one was retirement savings, which is a tough problem to solve, but we will unpack that after the commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Especially before the break, we were talking about where Canadians are most vulnerable. Savings, not a surprise, although it was interesting because during COVID, there was this big, I think, divide. A lot of people said that they saved a lot more. And then I'm assuming a lot of people didn't.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when you look at aggregate numbers, it's always misleading, right? It looks like, oh, billions of extra savings and bank accounts, but really, when you look at lower income individuals, the ones at the bottom of the income quintiles, it was still they still experienced net negative net savings over the course of the pandemic.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the myths that people have around financial planning? Because I often hear, Sebastian, well, it's about investing, and it's not, right? Especially because there's this rising challenge of outliving savings in retirement, and financial planning does play a big role in that, doesn't it?
No, it definitely does. And I think it just speaks to the nature of financial planning. It is not, and that's what makes this profession different than other financial professions, is that it looks at a wide array of aspects. Sure, it will look at investments, but it will also look at your financial management, will look at your insurance situation, your tax situation, your estate situation. And all of those, as I mentioned at the top of the show, they're all very much intertwined, right? If you don't have good insurance, you might be actually putting at risk your cash flows now, but also in the future. Insurance plays a huge role in estate planning. Think life insurance, for instance, right? So that's really why financial planning matters, is this ability to look at the multiple dimensions and how they interface with one another. And the literature does show that working with a financial planner has a positive impact on various aspects.
What would you say for those who are in, say, low income brackets that say, well, that's not what I need?
So I think it's definitely, it's easy to fall into this trap that, well, if I don't have money, why should I work with a financial planner? I don't have money to invest. But I think it just goes back to what you and I just mentioned, right? That it
Hmm.
goes well beyond investments. So, you might be, a low income household, but you still need to account for things like, estate planning. At the end of the day, everyone dies. Tax still matters, and as well as your insurance. And some point, hopefully, you get to retire.
Sebastian, I'm a huge advocate for financial planning as someone who did it, and I know how important it is, which is why I would welcome this news about this tax credit. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, what the proposal is, and just how it would work?
Yeah, most definitely. So the inspiration behind that credit is the Canada Training Credit. So if you remember, that was introduced by the government to incentivize more Canadians to seek training and improve and upskill. So in terms of the proposal we have in the paper, we recommend that it be introduced on a pilot basis at first to allow for modifications and see how it plays out. And it would be only available for individuals that are seeking financial planning for the first time. Because really, the goal of the credit is to incentivize more Canadians to seek financial planning. It would be refundable to make sure that it actually brings the certainty of a return, notwithstanding your income. And also, it just learns, quite frankly, the lessons of the US, where they had an itemized deduction. And as you can imagine, it mostly just benefited people with high income.
Right. So that's why
Um,
the tax credit and not a deduction.
exactly.
Okay.
And perhaps the last thing that is really important to mention would have to cover multiple areas of financial planning, because as we said, it's not about only focusing on investment. And as you probably figured out by now, the focus is really on low and middle income individuals. So it wouldn't be available to people in the higher brackets.
That was my next question, is what the criteria would have been, right? Because you want a proper financial plan done. We only have 20 seconds, Sebastien. Any indication of the timing of this and when we could see it come to fruition?
The next opportunity for the government to introduce a measure like this, obviously, is the federal budget. I think, last year the government told us in the last budget that they were seeking to improve the resiliency of the economy. But I would argue that you can't have a resilient economy without resilient households. So there's a
100%.
bit of a perfect alignment here.
Yeah. Sebastien, thanks so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Strictly Money. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.